Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. It's Sunday morning here in the Hudson Valley, and I got two of the Hudson Valley's finest with me to do this monumental task from the Hudson Valley Squares. Ryan Skow and Count Ralph Tamborra himself. What's happening, gentlemen? Good morning.
What's up? Morning.
At long last, we have
time.
arrived. We've only been talking about doing this for, God, Ryan, you and I talked about this well over a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, and then Ralph and I ranked Destruction a couple months ago, and Ralph and I were talking about Sodom, and Ralph was like, I really would like to take part in that Sodom ranking. I'm like, you got it. Let's do it. So here we are. So a band that burst on the scene right with all the rest of the German thrash titans, right? Creator, Destruction, Tankard, Sodom, all around the mid-'80s, coming out with their debut albums. 1986 was the official, I guess, debut full-length for Sodom, and they have released 16 studio albums to date. We're going to rank all of them. Since we've got 16, what do you guys think? Should we do 4 at a time?
Yeah, I was actually thinking that. Like
666?
Do my math in my head here.
666.
You know, do 666?
664, actually.
664, yeah.
664, we can do
math
that.
Caught up to us. Yeah, do 664. How's that sound? Do 3 go-arounds?
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll do that. So let's see. So Ryan, kick us off with your 16 through whatever. I'm terrible at math. 10, whatever it works out to be, 11, whatever.
So
6.
After we agreed to do all 16, I thought about it, and I'm like, this is fucking impossible. And I'll tell you 2 reasons why. They're one of my favorite bands, and they're one of my favorite bands in a way where I don't think they have any bad albums, much like Black Sabbath, Motorhead, Voivod. I like everything they've done, even the crappier albums. I like them. And much like Motorhead, I put them in the same boat where they had a ton of albums which are all pretty similar in quality. Like, not bad, but there's a couple of elite ones, but there's a lot that are just really good. But there's like 10 albums that fall in that. So that's tough to rank 10 albums in that block. And the last thing is a very old thrash band. The only old thrash band that I like. There's a lot of old thrash bands like Testament, Exodus, Creator, Megadeth, Death Angel. I don't like a lot of their newer stuff. I just don't. It's just personal taste. But Sodom, I do. I like everything they've done. The only other old thrash band like that for me is Voivod. But Voivod have gone all over the map stylistically. Sodom's Sodom. They all sound pretty, not totally similar, but yeah. So this was very, very difficult. So,
I would say the only out of especially like a lot of the bands you mentioned, I would say the other band for me, especially when Ralph and I did the ranking, that I was pleasantly surprised how much I still really like the latter catalog is Destruction. I think Destruction have been very, very consistent with the latter period stuff. It's very similar to this, I think.
They are. I would agree. They are definitely up there. I don't hold them, the newer stuff, in the same level as I hold Sodom, but that's just, apples and oranges. It's just personal preference. There's nothing wrong with any of it. They had some really good albums.
Destruction disappeared in the 90s. Destruction basically took the 90s off. They didn't really have anything.
Yep.
Yeah, and then when they came back with the Antichrist, which I think is a phenomenal album, they've been doing pretty good ever since. But to me, of all those bands that have stayed like thrash metal, because I don't really count Voivod in that, Sodom are my favorite of all the thrash bands. So this was very, very difficult. So I got a list. I changed it a lot. I had it pretty hammed down, and I had a good discussion with a friend yesterday over in England, and he's like, how could you put that last? So I started thinking about, fuck. So I changed it around again, and now I got a good list. And coming in at number 16 is Epitome of Torture. So recently, a couple times I was lucky to see them. In the current day, they brought back their old guitarist, Frank Blackfire, who was in the band in the 80s, played on Persecution Mania, Agent Orange, like their classic period. But up until throughout the late 2000s, they were still doing good. It's still a good album, like I would consider like one of the better low quality Sabbath albums. Like, no one's gonna say it's their best, but it's good. But you could definitely tell the band were they were getting into a rut. They were getting into the same groove. And when I go and listen to this album, it's just like, it's good. It's good. And that's kind of all I could say about it. The songs aren't as vicious as they used to be. The production's a little rubbery, I guess. And so it's no surprise that after this album, or after these final albums, Tom overhauled the band completely, brought Frank Blackfire back, and ended up kicking ass because now in their current incarnation, they are full of piss and vinegar, 1,000%. So that's my number 16. And honestly, my bottom three are the three albums that preceded the current rejuvenation. So my number 15 is In War and Pieces. The dates on these albums, it's like 2000. It's basically throughout the 2010s is when these albums happened. Yeah. So again, good album, cool art. Some of these albums, a lot of the riffs kind of sound like later Slayer to me, which is, not bad to sound like Slayer, but Sodom are pretty much as old as Slayer, and they were their own beasts. So like, why do they kind of gotta? I didn't really care that they sounded like another band, another famous band. My number 14 is Decision Day, which I think is the best of these three albums that preceded their current era. And I think it's also the last one too. It's the last one they did before he sacked the lineup, brought Frank back, and kind of kicked things off again. So again, good album, but yeah, that artwork. And I'm just not a big fan of like that digital modern artwork. I don't know. It's just me. It kind of looks. I wouldn't wear it on a
Joe
t-shirt.
Pantango's artwork.
Yeah,
Pantango does Motorhead.
He does, but it's just I don't. It's not one of my favorite pieces he did. It feels, I don't know. It doesn't feel good to me. And he does a lot of really cool pieces. And I think he did. Let's see. Verify. Yeah, he did their. Ralph, that's him too, right? That definitely looks like him on the newest one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fucking crazy art. But we'll come to that in a little bit.
That's the only two albums he's done for them. But
it's cool, and he's a great artist. Obviously, did a cool ton of shit for Motorhead, like Sacrifice, which is a fucking awesome cover. So number 13. Sorry, I got to keep these in order. There's so many. Number 13, the 90s, tough time for many thrash bands. I think Sodom fared better than most in the 90s. They still had the intensity. They still had the speed. They still had the violence. They took a detour more into like a punkish Motorhead sound, which was fine. I think it worked kind of well for them. So I'm going to say Get What You Deserve is their number 13. Again, compared to how a lot of thrash bands played in the 90s, I think they were way better. It was generally a tough decade. Some bands did pretty good, like Testament. I think Slayer did good with Divine Intervention, and Sodom did well. I think they did pretty well. I don't think these two albums get a lot of attention. I don't see people mention them a lot, but I don't know. I like them. And number 12 is Masquerade in Blood, which is their other like mid 90s album. Very punkish, very Motorhead, but yeah, not lacking in intensity, not lacking in riffs. I think it's good. So how many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I guess I can get some props out here. Number 11 is the self-titled Sodom. When this album came out, I really, really liked it. This one was from 2006. This was kind of the last one they did before they kind of dropped off into those final three albums I mentioned. I really liked it. I've gone back into it in recent years, and I always feel it's a little slower, and it just, I don't know, it lacks the intensity. But the songwriting is really good. There's a lot of good, catchy songs on here. Blood on Your Lips, Buried in Justice Ground, City of God, Axis of Evil. They get stuck in your head. They're definitely earworms. So the songwriting is there. I'm just, man, I wish it was a little faster and more vicious. Some of their classic earlier stuff is like full tilt, full throttle, like nuclear thrash. And of all the bands, they were they were up there with like old Slayer and Dark Angel for like hitting that intense sound. So that is my last for this round, is the self-titled album song, which is cool because it has a digipack where you can only kind of see the shadow outline of the guy on the cover. And then the actual album itself, you can see the, you know what? Sorry, the reflection here is brutal. Let me get rid of that. Yeah, you can actually see the character himself. That's cool. Really cool album. So, yeah, I've kind of I loved it, and then I kind of soured on it a little bit. And then in recent times, I'm like, the songwriting is really good. That's the thing. For as fast as Sodom would always play and as vicious as they were, they always had good songs. They always had good riffs. They always had good, memorable choruses. I've been lucky to see them a couple times lately, and every song people are singing along. The lyrics are like, they get stuck in your head. Great choruses and stuff, which is important. That's important for take a good band to be legendary. So that is my first batch of 6. That was 6, right? I think that was 6. Yeah, that was 6. All right, there we go.
All right, Ralph, over to you.
All right, so yeah, like a lot of what Skow was saying about like their discography, it's really like maybe my favorite of all the old thrash bands. When they didn't they were one band that I stayed up with throughout all the years, where so many bands let me down at one point, and then they kind of got off my radar, and I got into the really extreme stuff. But Sodom was the one band that kind of stayed with. I mean, I had my very first one, the number 16, Better Off Dead. It was in 1990. I liked the Thin Lizzy cover, but I thought it was a weak album compared to what had came before it. And it's still, I think it's a great album, but it's when I think of what was before it, it was kind of a letdown at the time if you were really into Perfect Mania and Agent Orange and stuff. And then when this came out, it was kind of a step down, and I almost blew them off the way I blew off so many thrash bands and moved on with total death metal stuff. But then they redeemed themselves really good on the next album, and then from then on, I just kept up with them. But yeah, I think it's a good album. But you have to pick one at 16 there. Then and I also didn't own that one. That was one of the few that I don't own. There's only two of them that I don't have a physical copy of. My next one is Till Death Do Us Unite. And this one.
That cover is always crazy.
Yeah.
That cover is ridiculous.
Yeah, pregnant woman and a big
sumo wrestler, right?
Yeah, like a real fat dude.
But the hazy shade of winter Bangles cover, that alone probably put it towards the end towards me. But they have like a crossover feel on this album, which they do on a few of their albums, and I love crossover, and that's what kind of separates some of these albums from the more straight thrash death metal sounds. But there's a lot of good stuff on there. They have that "Fuck the Police" song, which is kind of a real like a crossover kind of feel to it. Then I'm gonna go. My number 14 is "In War and Pieces," the 13th album. Again, I can't really say anything bad about it. It's good. It's just I don't know why I put it so far back, but I just as you're going through them, there's so many are so similar and so close to each other, so I just have to put it back there. Then I went with "Get What You Deserve." Again, another like kind of crossover feel to this one. They do the Venom's "Angel Dust," and the one thing I think is really brilliant on here is the instrumental, the tribute to Moby Dick, where it's like an instrumental, but then there's whales like singing to each other and doing like a whale. It sounds like something like Pink Floyd or somebody else would have come up with, but I think it's a really brilliant idea. Yeah, it's so different, Then my number 12 is "Masquerade in Blood." I think Brian had that at number 12 too. 7th album. They do an Anti-Nowhere League cover, and that's "Let's Break the Law," which is another like old crossover kind of hardcore band. And on the Japanese version, they have a Saxon cover, 20,000 Feet, that they do if you get the Japanese one.
Really? I gotta listen to that. I don't think I ever heard that.
I haven't heard that either.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then, so my number 10 is "Epitome of Violence." Of torture. I say it as "epitome" because that's how he says it in the song. But I got this one on vinyl.
Tom's like, "Fuck, saying it the real way," but I'm gonna say it the way I want to say it.
Say it the Sodom way.
Yeah.
When you're listening to the title track, though, he said "Epitome of Torture," so it's like I had to actually write that down. Don't say the other way. But, another crossover sound to this album. It stands out as like being different, compared to the more death metal thrash. Like I said, it's great when they go on the full death metal thrash, but they have like that crossover feel. It's got the more of a Motorhead kind of Venom-ish feel at times, where it's got like the punk influences kind of in there too, compared to the straight up death and thrash. Yeah, that's my 6.
Okay.
I always see people give them shit because of that Motorhead Venom sound, but I don't know. I kind of liked it. I was and it's dirty sounding too. Like those are dirty albums, which I always appealed to me about that bit.
It's like a fun part of them too. They're not like super serious. They got like their fun side to them, where it's the more Motorhead kind of fun side to them.
Yeah.
The drinking side to them. They're definitely a drinking band, you know.
Yeah, you can tell they always have a good sense of humor about Uncle Tom there.
All right. My number 16, I'm going to go with 1994's Get What You Deserve, sixth album. Amazing how much they changed lineups over the years, right? It's like just trying to keep track of all these people. So here we got Atomic Steve, I guess his name was, on drums. This is the last album with Andy Briggs on guitar. I mean, this one is kind of like a shift, that kind of like massive death thrash hybrid they were doing before. Now it's kind of like this hardcore thrash crossover type of thing. A lot of short, speedy songs. Title track's really good. Eat Me is really good. Sodomize is really good. For me, though, when they're doing this kind of crossover thing, I find like, I don't know, a lot of the songs really, really samey, and they don't deviate from track to track, but it's still good. It's still enjoyable. I just find that out of all 16 albums, I think this one to me is the least satisfying, but still fun. So Get What You Deserve, number 16. Number 15.
Something's got to be last. You got to pick
Something's
something.
got to be last, right? You got to put these somewhere. And kind of along those same lines here, Masquerade in Blood from 1995, the seventh album. This is number 15. So here we got Strali joins on guitar. This one's produced by Uli Passelt. Kind of like on Get What You Deserved, they're kind of doing this hardcore thrash groove type of thing. But there's still a little bit of those death metal tendencies in their music, like there is through lots of their albums. Title track is really good. I really like Gathering of the Mind. Fields of Honor is good. Scum kind of reminds me of Overkill in spots a little bit. Not necessarily a bad thing. Again, decent album. Not one of my favorites, but still pretty good. So that's number 15. Number 14, I'm going to go with Till Death Do Us Unite with the crazy cover. Cool back cover, I think. Eighth album, 1987. Harris Johns, who produced a lot of their albums. Is back
Did good job, too.
Yeah, oh yeah, hell yeah. You got Berneman on guitar, Bobby Shutkowski on drums. I think Frozen Screams is a total kick-ass track. I just wish it was longer. It's just like it's barely 3 minutes long. Really good stuff. Fuck the Police, total mosh pit classic. But you get a lot of also the rest of this kind of crossover stuff on here. Like Hanging Judge, No Way Out, Politics, a Maniac. Title track though is great. Hazy Shade of Winter is a strange cover, but I think it kind of works. They do it in a Sodom way, which is cool.
It's not their weirdest cover either, which is
no, it's not. But it's pretty. It's okay, man. I give them credit for doing a song like that. Like who would have thought that? Wander in the Valley is a really good one. Again, some really good stuff on here. Wacky cover, but some good stuff there. Number 13. Epitome or epitome of torture, however you want to say it, from 2013. So this is their 14th album. Cool cover artwork. Maka on drums here. I think it's a really well-produced album. It's just got this big wall of sound, super crunchy. My Final Bullet's great. Title track is great. Stigmatized is so brutal. Cannibal, it's got this really big, massive bottom end to it. I think Tom's bass is what I really like about some of the latter period albums is Tom's bass is really, really heavy and upfront in the mix. Ryan, you talk a lot about bands where you can really hear the bass player, like in type stuff. Yep. I mean, Tom's bass is so loud on some of these latter period albums. I think that's really, really cool, especially on Invocating the Demons, which he's just like bursting through the mix, man. I really like it. I think it's a really solid album. Maybe doesn't stand out as much as some of the more recent albums for me, but I still think it's really good. So that's my number 13. Let's see, number 12. I'm going to go with one I don't have, which is Better Off Dead from 1990. Fourth album. Harris Johns producing this one too. You got Michael Hoffman on guitar, replacing Frank Blackfire. I think like when you listen to the production of this album and the couple that came before it, I think like Tom's vocals are higher in the mix and there's less emphasis on the guitar because the way the guitars are produced on the previous couple albums, they're like fucking
Heavy.
buzz saws. I mean, just that's what you hear first and foremost. For here, if on this album I hear Tom more, and the guitars are a little bit more subdued. But Shellfire Defense is great. Saw is the Law, really good headbanger. Capture the Flag, Blood Trails. Title track is a total crusher. I mean, the Tank and Thin Lizzy covers are fine, I think, but I almost get the impression when listening to this album, because most of the songs are pretty short. You got a couple covers. I'm wondering if they were a little short on material at this point in time from like touring so much and whatnot. But and I don't think it's quite as intense as the couple albums that came before it, but I still think it's pretty damn good. And my last for this round is the self-titled Sodom album from 2006, their 11th album. Here they bring in Andy Briggs to produce, their former guitar player. I think Blood on Your Lips is a total rager of an opener. So good. Wanted Dead is great. Production here, again, more bass heavy, I think, which seems to be a trend in more recent years. And, the guitars are just not quite as crunchy. I'm okay with the big, booming, distorted bass sounds. I don't mind that at all. Buried in the Justice Ground, kind of like a straight up black metal song. Pretty damn good. City of God is great. Bibles and Guns, Axis of Evil, very solid record. And the cover's kind of also fairly cool. So yeah, that's my first 6. Back to Ryan.
All right, so now we get into the meat and gristle here. So one of the disadvantages of being a little younger, I'm only 42, is when I grab these albums, sometimes I grab reissues. And I'm not someone, I don't care, I don't really give a fuck about having original press. I've just never been that person. I want the original audio though. So like remasters and stuff. If it sounds weird, like what Megadeth did, or I don't care about that. But in the case of this, my copy of Till Death Do Us Unite doesn't have the crazy cover. It has this generic ass. It's just this. It's just like it's like the Sodom logo or mascot and a guy, and then on the back it's got this cool picture of them eating raw meat with blindfolds on. But that's how it was. Yeah, everything. This album's cool, but it definitely falls into. First off, it's '97, which I think deserves some credit, because how many thrash bands in '97 were coming out and busting out songs like Frozen Screams, album opener. It's like an absolute fucking buzzsaw attack. Sounds great. But yeah, the album on the whole, it doesn't maintain that quality through every song. And it is a long album. It is 15 songs. Second song, Fuck the Police. I'm like, is this an NWA cover? Because they have weird covers, but no, it's not. It's the original song. And then they got that Easy Shade of Winter, which is, it's all right. It's cool. Yeah, I like this album. Do I throw it on that often? Not really. But for like a 90s, that's always the thing. For a 90s thrash album, it's good. But in the case of Sodom, what they would do shortly afterwards was, in my opinion, a lot better. So it was almost like a preamble to what was about to come.
And as crazy as the original album artwork is, you got to still have it on the reissue, right?
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. And again, that was the thing where I bought it, and like that's what was available.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend time hunting for, the original art when the audio is the same. Like, because I did double check, it's the same album. They didn't do any weird remastering or anything. So whatever. So next one is kind of cool because overwhelmingly, I don't like when bands re-record stuff. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. It's very rare, very fucking rare. Because most of the time, even when it's good, it's like, okay, shit, I'll grab one right now. On some days, my favorite band of all time. On some days, my favorite band, Voivod, did it recently with this Morgoth Tales. And it's like, okay, it's cool. It's Voivod, probably my favorite band. How cool is this? It's all right. So with that in mind, Sodom actually just redid one recently, which we're not including here. The same thing. They went through their whole catalog and re-recorded songs. It's okay. Whatever. But in 2007, Tom got the idea to reunite with the original 2 members of the band, Chris Witchhunter and Gray Violator, drummer and guitarist, respectively. And they went back and they re-recorded their first EP, In the Sign of Evil. And then they recorded all these other songs that they had meant to do back then, and they never did because they didn't have studio time or money or whatever. So that's cool to me. So it's like we initially intended to make it an album. We didn't have the money or time. I've also heard people say, is that really the case? Yeah, no one will ever know. It's like only Tom knows, But be that as it may, I'll take him at his word. That was what he wanted to do. And he got the original lineup back together, which wasn't the lineup at the time. He had other guys in the band. He's like, I'm going to put you on the side for a minute. I'm going to get the original guys back together, and we're going to do these songs, which was cool. You could tell they hadn't done stuff in a while. The original EP.
They apparently hadn't played in quite a while.
Yeah, they hadn't played in a long time. Unfortunately, Chris Witchhunter, the drummer, he would pass away the following year. So it's sloppy and raw. But the original EP is very sloppy and raw. And there was no efforts to like gussy this up with like, we're going to make this to spit shine polished album, because the original In the Sign of Evil from '84, it's like one of the cornerstones of black metal. It's just disgusting and filthy and raw. It's great. So this one they called In the Final Sign of Evil. And I like it. Is it a mandatory album unless you're kind of like a Sodomaniac? No. And I wouldn't even say it's like mandatory if you love the original EP. It's kind of like a curiosity, but I always like that he got the original guys back and they kind of fleshed it out into a full album. It's a fun listen. It's raw, it's sloppy, which at the time, even though Sodom started that way, by this era in their career, they were pretty much like a shit hot studio band. Like they knew what they were doing, and they sounded very tight for a very long time. So this was out of character for them in 2007. And it's cool for that reason. I just think it's a cool little album. Obviously, you have the whole original EP, and then you have, other songs like Hatred of the Gods and, Where Angels Die, next to like fucking classics like Blasphemer and, Witchy Metal, Burst Command to War, Outbreak of Evil, which they always play, and it's got that great chorus that everybody sings along all drunk in the fucking crowd. So that's my next one. Put that bad boy away there. Moving on down the list, we have Better Off Dead, which I like. Now, Better Off Dead, to me, the big hang up on this album, let's grab this bad boy, is here we go. Frank Blackfire is not on this album. So Frank Blackfire, whose name I mentioned several times, to me was a key part of, even though it's, Tom Angel Ripper, it's his band, sometimes you have that other member that really is a big part of it. So he had played on a few previous albums. He didn't play on this album. Like I said, the guitars are a lot quieter. It's not this buzzsaw nuclear attack that the previous albums had, which you kind of go back to ironically after this. But it's more of a speed metal album, which is cool. But, is that really Sodom? I always liked it. The guy's name was Michael Hoffman, and like, I know, Pete, you're kind of keeping track of all the members here. Sodom's had so many people that, some guys really stand out. Like Frank is a guy that he's instrumental in the band. He really stands out. His presence makes a big difference, and the albums that he's on is like, tremendous. But otherwise, like, you've had this guy on this album, this guy on this album. Okay, I think it sounds pretty good, but yeah, it's not like as good as the albums around it, I'll say, but by itself, I consider it pretty fucking good. Now, this one is a beast, because after Till Death Do Us Unite, they came back and did a follow-up album, which this one, I'm going to see what year this was. This was 99. So again, 99. How great was most classic thrash bands at that point? Not that good. A lot of them had fallen off the map completely, or they were putting out just like Reload, Slayer just did Diabolos and Musica. Megadeth was doing, I think, like Risk. It wasn't a good time for classic thrash in 1999. Well, Sodom said, fuck that. And they came out with Code Red, which is a fucking bulldozer of an album. And the first two songs on this, the title track and What Hell Can Create, back to back, I'll tell you what, I put them on like every workout mix I make, because they are just absolute barn burners, just full speed ahead. The sound is heavy and nasty, and it's just fucking fast. It's great. It's a great album. I love the artwork. I used to have a t-shirt of that. I don't know where the hell it is. Yeah. Now, that's another thing too. Not only is it a great thrash album, but it's a great thrash album for 1999, which I don't know. I mean, name another classic thrash band that was putting out thrash of this quality in 1999. I cannot. I really can't. Next time we're going to go to, what do we got? Oh, yes. We're going to go back to another time when thrash was still kind of on the ropes a little bit, but not as much. Early 90s. I see Ralph's wearing the shirt. This was the one that followed off Better Off Dead. This is Tapping the Vein. And this is the death metaliest. Is that a word? Yeah, death metaliest they ever sounded. This album's so the only thing I don't like about this album is that early on they were very fast and very intense, like Persecution Mania, Agent Orange, which we'll get to. This album doesn't have that classic thrash feel as much. It's almost a full-on descent into death metal, which I like. I really like it. Every song is a fucking butcher. It really is. Body Parts, Skinned Alive, Deadline, Bullet in the Head, The Crippler. It's just great. Unfortunately, they don't really come back to this a lot live, at least these days, but it's cool because I could throw this on. I love that artwork too. Another cool rendition of their mascot. I don't know if the mascot has a name. Like a lot of these, a lot of these classic metal mascots, they always have a name. Even like Dio with Murray, even if you don't know it, like, everybody knows Maiden and Eddie. Vic Rattlehead from Megadeth. I don't know if they ever named this guy, but he pops up a lot. So that is my next one. And then moving right into present day, that name again, we're going to mention his name again, Frank Blackfire. He comes back after Tom redid the lineup, and they did Genesis XIX, and this was in 2020. Man, to hear this, and this is one of those cool things, this is kind of how I felt with, to use a comparison to a band I mentioned, Voivod, when they got Chewy on guitars, because I always thought they were good. But then you hear this new album from these bands where they're just rejuvenated. Like, man, Sodom was always good. They were putting out these 2010 albums, which were solid, but it's like, okay, a new Sodom album, whatever. To hear this album, this really lit a fire under my ass. I still listen to it all the time. And when I saw them a couple times recently, they play a lot of stuff off it, and it sounds fucking great. It's fast. It's intense. They dialed back kind of that fullness of the production of the more recent 2010s, like a Epitome of Torture, to it's like a little raw and nastier and like more old school, like more organic. I love it. So then I love the artwork too. Yeah, great album. Super well. It's just, if you haven't heard this, because it's fairly recent, and I know some people kind of like, it's a new album from an old thrash band. No, I recommend getting this. It is fucking good. I think I got the. I have the vinyl. Yeah, I actually grabbed the vinyl. This is one of those albums I said I want to get CD and vinyl because it's that good. So recommend that. And that is my next batch of 6.
All right, cool. Ralph?
All right, my next one is The Final Sign of Evil, as you were talking about it. Yeah, these songs didn't exist back then. I got this old like bootleg, Satan's Conjuration. It's old Sodom live show from '84, and some of these songs are on here, and it's got like this old Witchhammer CD in here with all like songs.
Oh, cool.
From back then. And yeah, like you were saying, this is all supposed to be part of In the Sign of Evil, but they didn't have enough money to record them all, so they just put out an EP, which is kind of weird for a band to put out their first release as an EP. But Frost did, Destruction did it. They should have probably went back to that great haircut for when they did this album. That would have given them more of that feel. But,
I love that haircut. I love that picture too.
I'm surprised you didn't wear that shirt. With
it's upstairs, man. I should have worn it. I just grabbed my Agent Orange shirt.
So then after that, I got M16. It's a concept album about Vietnam. Dark subjects throughout it. It's very heavy throughout. Very serious. Not just a drinking kind of fun album. But great photography. Then I got number 8. I got Code Red. The 9th studio album, again, just a really great, solid, all the way through album. Love every song on this album. Then I got Decision Day at number 7. The vocals have a little bit more of a black metal feel on this. It's really heavy and vicious. And I like the cover by Joe Pentago. I think it must have been a real thrill to get him, since they're such big Motorhead fans. Had the shirt of this album too. Then yeah, it's Genesis 19 is how you say that album, by the way. It's not Genesis X. It's Roman numerals for 19.
I don't know, I just like saying XIX.
I hear a lot of people say that, but to me, this was my favorite album of 2020. Like I love this album. I couldn't believe how great it was. Blackfire Returns. I think that got me so excited about this coming out. Again, it's covered ago, but this album really blew me away. When I looked at all the albums that came out 2020, it was my number 1 album. Loved it. Oh, and then so yeah, my number 5 is Genesis 15. Number 5, I got the original with the slip cover. Is self-titled album. I love this album. This is when they came to the chance. This is what they were touring for. and I played the hell out of it. It's so catchy, it's so heavy and powerful. It's almost like a groove death metal kind of album. It has like a groove part. I can see what you were saying about it not being like a super fast album, but every song is memorable, feels
Yeah, the songs
heavy,
are
and I just
great.
love it. Every time I kept going back through all these albums, this like really stood out to me, and I knew I had to put it really high up on my list. But yeah, that's it for me right now.
All right. So as Ryan said, this, now we're into the really good stuff here. My number 10 is The Final Sign of Evil from 2007, 12th album. So again, like the guy said, the re-recording of their EP in The Sign of Evil, which is basically this bad boy right there. And then 7 songs, written for that album, but never recorded back in the day. I think it's raw, it's sloppy. You got Gray Violator and Chris Witchhunter back in the band, and they talk a lot about how these guys hadn't really played in a long time before they went and did this, and you can kind of tell, but it doesn't matter. And it's so funny because you listen to this and it takes you all the way back to like the early mid 80s. I mean, it sounds like it just came from there rather than something that they put together in 2007, which is good. But Blasphemer is great. That's basically early black metal. Bloody Corpse is great, witching metal. To me, it's just a nice way to revisit these like kind of pulverizing, brutal, raw early songs, right? So I think it's really cool they did this. And I know lots of bands do things like this. I think these guys, this is kind of like the blueprint for how to do it the right way,
I agree.
Yeah. Number 9, I'm going to go with Genesis 19. This is really good. First album is a quartet, right? You got Frank Blackfire coming back. You got York Segat's second guitar player. Tony Merkel on drums. I mean, this is a bulldozing album. Sodom and Gomorrah, raging speed metal thrash, done as only Sodom can do. It's such a great song. Euthanasia is totally brutal. The title track is epic. Killer riffs in that. And I love how they, like, especially like on the last couple albums, they're starting to do these like longer songs, and they're mixing like atmosphere and these really cool shreddy guitar parts and stuff, and just massive riffing. I mean, that might even be my favorite song on this album. Really good. Glock and Roll is really cool. Again, you got Tom's big boom and bass all over this album, especially on like Harpooner, another one of those longer tracks. Dehumanize kind of has a doomy feel. Indoctrination is totally brutal. Really strong album. Could even rank higher. But like I said, everything like in this part of the ranking is pretty damn special. So that's my number 9. My number 8 is going to be, and this may surprise you guys, but I'm going to go with Obsessed by Cruelty, the debut album. I really like it a lot. It's raw, it's fast, it's uncompromising. And, at this point in time, this is even more filthy than Creator of Destruction. And the vocally, and we've talked about this every time Sodom comes up on any past Hudson Valley Square show. I mean, the vocals are basically, it's like early black metal. It's like, if the black metal scene wasn't inspired by this, I'd be highly surprised. Death Like Silence, Brandish the Scepter. I mean, those guitars just like a freaking chainsaw. You got this big doomy riff that kicks off Proselytism Reveal, and then it picks up steam later on. Equinox is just totally blazing. Title track is great. Fall of Majesty Town is a total headbanger. Pretenders to the Throne. I mean, you really can't go wrong with this album, right? I almost feel bad putting it at number 8 and not in the top 3 or 4. But
you think too, Euronymous from Mayhem, when he started a label, his label was called Death Like Silence. So
yeah,
there you go. Yeah, Sodom was a huge influence on like black metal on a whole, or the early Sodom was especially that album.
Yeah, for sure. So, and there's like a little for those of you looking to get some of this stuff, people watching, you can probably still get this. There's this kind of collection right here, 2 originals of Sodom, and what they do is it's got Persecution Mania, and then you got both the EP and the Sign of Evil and Obsessed by Cruelty on one disc here, which is pretty cool. So that's my number 8. My number 7 is Decision Day, 15 album, 2016. Cornelius Rambot produces. Final album with Berneman and Maka. I mean, In Retribution is just a killer opener. I mean, Tom's vocals are just so evil. You got Rolling Thunder, which just crushes. The title track is great. Again, that big booming bass from Tom all over this album. Caligula, he's like leading the charge on that song. So good. Who is God? Might be the best song on the album. Just absolutely amazing. Riffs all over the place. Strange Lost World, another song that's got Tom's bass all over the place. Vaginal Born Evil, just total thrash classic. Blood Lions, really, really strong album. Yeah, the artwork is kind of cool and wacky. I dig it. And then number 6, I'm going to go with In War and Pieces from 2010, 13th album. Valdemar Soryacha, however the hell he says his name, producing. I love the production on this album. I think this is just completely pulverizing here. Title track, Hellfire, right out of the gate. You get these 2 tracks that just absolutely kill. Through Toxic Veins is amazing. Nothing Counts More Than Blood. Storm Raging Up. Soul Contraband is kind of moody and slower, but really good. God Bless You is another one that's kind of like a little slower, but still really, really heavy. The Art of Killing Poetry. I mean, to me, it's funny because you don't really think of Sodom as a band where they have these like great productions, but actually I think some of their albums sound really damn good. And I think this might be, for me anyway, from my ears, this might be their best sounding album from a production standpoint. It's just so heavy. The guitars are just massive. The bass is massive. The drums and the vocals are just in the right place in the mix. Really, really good, strong, kind of latter period album. So that's my number 6. And number 5, I'm going to go with M16 from 2001. Again, Harris Johns producing. He did a good chunk of their albums. Concept album about the Vietnam War. Another really good production on this one. I think Berneman's riffs are just immense on this record. Weird Kong, Among the Weird Kong is just a killer opener. These guys do openers really, really well. Most of their albums just kind of hit you and just with a punch to the throat, which is really good. I Am the War, Napalm in the Morning, Mind Jumper, Genocide, all just really crush. Cannon Fodder is great, just totally brutal. And the title track is great too. Yeah, great artwork. I really like this a lot. That's my number 5. Finish us out, Ryan.
All right, we're in the heavy shit here.
There we are.
Right, so, yeah, this is now we're into like some of my favorite albums of all time. So, number 4, of all the modern thrash or like modern albums from like old thrash bands, there are a lot of days when I say this is my favorite. This could be my favorite. I love everything about this. I love the art. I love the good production. I love the riffs. I love everything about it. And you just mentioned it, and that is M16, which I finally tracked down on vinyl not that long ago. And I fucking love this fucking band shot too. Them all done up in like camo and stuff. Yeah, this is like you said. Berneman was never my favorite guitarist in the band, although he's extremely competent and good. But on this album, he fucking sizzles. And of course, I got it on CD too. Yeah, when I heard this, I loved it. First off, it's got my favorite cover, my favorite weird cover, which if you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket, you know this Trashman song Surfin' Bird. Well, they do Surfin' Bird. And I know the Ramones did it, and the Ramones cover is cool. Don't get me wrong, but this is my favorite rendition of that song because it is fucking ridiculous, especially that vocal scat part. Yeah, if you haven't heard it, just go on YouTube and it'll make your day. Yeah, Among the Weird Kong, one of the best album openers they ever did. It's just full tilt, bass drums kicking a million miles an hour. When I just saw them recently, they played the title track M16. I kind of wish they had done Among the Weird Kong or the second song, I Am the War, because those songs are it's just a fucking bulldozer. That's what I always liked about this band, is that when it comes to that full tilt nuclear thrash, the only bands that I thought were in that same league are like Dark Angel at their best and like Slayer at their best. Like there's a lot of good bands that are good thrash bands, but like I'll be honest, like even as much as I love like a band like Testament or like Death Angel, like they never were that kind of band where it's like just getting hit by fucking hammers relentlessly. They just didn't play that level of thrash. Sodom did, and they were very good at it. And this album is it's a beast. Yeah, that artwork is cool as shit. I've never had this on a shirt. I've always wanted it. I've never seen it official, but it's always something I keep an eye out for when I go to festivals.
I'm sure we can get it somewhere. I'm sure there's somewhere.
Always like, because sometimes you see prints and they're like, what's the artwork? But like the print kind of sucks or it's small. Like I don't like shirts where like the print's like, it like fits between your nipples. It's like too tiny. Some bootlegs, but one day I will find it. So the next one I combined 2 together because they do kind of flow together, and that is the iconic, amazing, genre-defining. So we got all kinds of copies of this shit here. I got to track them all down. Here we go. So 1984, In the Sign of Evil, one of the dawn birth of black metal, along with like Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, Venom. Yeah, this was a big influence on black metal. I mean, that artwork is just, I've seen that so many times on so many shirts, on patches, on painted leather jackets. It's just like one of the most iconic images of like 80s, like underground metal. Was that fucking cool? And even though the remake was cool, you know, Outbreak of Evil, Sepulchral Voice, you know, which again, there's a cool record label from Germany. They named their record label Sepulchral Voice after this. So, you know, the influence on this blasphemer, witching metal, Burst Command to War, every song's a classic. It's raw, it's filthy, it's disgusting. I love it. And they still play these songs live too. And when they do, the crowd goes fucking bananas. And that rolls right into 1986, Obsessed by Cruelty. And there's a cool photo of the band on the back too. And the cool thing about this album, and the reason I tracked this vinyl down, because this CD version has also has Obsessed by Cruelty on it too. But they recorded this album twice. Totally different studios, totally different recordings. Like not like a remaster, remix, soup to nuts, a whole different recording, like two different versions of the album. And they put out this reissue a couple of years ago, which actually 2016 on Steamhammer. This is one of the highest amounts I ever paid for a vinyl because it went out of print right away. It came out, it sold out, and I'm like, well, fuck, like a year later, I'm like, that happened. This has both versions of the album. So they recorded one in the States, right there, and then they recorded one in Germany. And the track lists are a little different. Yeah, they're two totally different albums. Like they're available on YouTube. You can go check them out. I believe the one that most people were familiar with. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth here. So on this version, this reissue, for example, this has the album on it. One of these versions of the album, like especially us in the States, kind of propagated over here, and it's like the version most people know. And I think I was into metal for a couple of years before a friend of mine from Germany is like, no, there's a whole different recording in the album, like totally different. Doesn't sound anything like the other one. It's still filthy and raw, but it's like you got to hear it. And when they put this version out that has both of them, I think I spent like $70 on this fucking thing to track it down, and it's cool. And it's got this fucking great gatefold too. It's just cool as shit. All these old pictures in the back in the day with, you know, that bull haircut and bullet belts and flames. What do we got here? Yeah, some of these like these pictures right here are fucking cool. Yeah, love this album, and both versions of it are cool. So you know what? That was worth every penny of those $70 I coughed out for it.
But no, we haven't mentioned it at all, but they have a kick-ass logo, and it's basically on every single album, right? I mean, is there
it is. Yeah, they never deviated from it. Even like here early on, like on the first one, you know, it's I like the way it's printed like vertically too, just the way it's like collimated there. Yeah, it's cool as shit. But number one and number two, these two are almost interchangeable for me because they're both so good. This is like the holy trinity of the band. So after Obsessed by Cruelty, they brought in again Frank Blackfire comes in, you know, their original guitarist leaves. The band instantly became tighter overnight, which is one of those weird things where it's like over a very short period of time, it's like, again, Voivod going from Roar to Killing Technology. Very short period of time, but like, man, you guys got a lot tighter, like overnight. You know, I want to say Slayer did it a little bit, like Hell Awaits to Rain and Blood. So again, the other big change here is the producer.
Yep.
The next two albums have Harris Johns. So you have Tom, original drummer, Chris Witchhunter, Frank Blackfire, and Harris Johns in production. That's like the holy mix for this band. So even though these two are almost interchangeable, for number two, I'm going to go with the shirt I'm wearing here, which is which was originally, I don't have the picture, it's Agent Orange, 1989. This was a picture from Life magazine from the Vietnam War. It's actually a real picture taken from the inside of a spooky gunship. Was the name? It was basically a slow plane with a lot of guns out one side, and it would circle around the target really slow and just rain fucking hell on, you know, whatever they were shooting at. And the song Magic Dragon, or Puff the Magic Dragon, was a nickname about that airplane, because that's kind of, I guess, the sound it made at the time when it was, you know, those miniguns and shit. So this album is perfect thrash metal. I didn't even know they were going to do this when I just saw them at Maryland Death Fest last month, but they played the whole album. I knew they were playing, and they played two nights. I guess the first night, which I didn't go to, me and Nick, was just, you know, a mix of songs. The second night they go up, and before they go on stage, they put the backdrop to this album up behind them. And I'm like, oh. And sure enough, they just played the whole album, start to end, and then a couple other tracks. Yeah, this to me is perfect. It is fast as fuck. It is heavy. This album has examples of what they did better than probably anybody, which is they do fast as shit, and then they stop and they slow it down to like these mosh riffs. These just big, heavy, like the title track, Agent Orange, is like the perfect example of it. I don't think any thrash band in history does it better. Like Nuclear Assault were close, but I think Sodom are the fucking reigning champs. Every song on this is good. You know, Gus Bomp is like this fast, like punk rock kind of thrasher. Tired in Red, Incest, Remember the Fallen. Yeah, the whole thing is great. Perfect album. This to me is like the epitome of like 80s thrash. Like if I want to listen to an 80s thrash album or someone that never heard thrash, I'm as likely to recommend this as I am like Rain and Blood or like Ride the Lightning. It's perfect. And number one, again, these two are almost interchangeable. Same trio, same lineup. Harris Johns, 1987, only 1 year after Obsessed by Cruelty. I like saying it that way. Great fucking art, everything is Persecution Mania. Man, I love that fucking art. I love like the way the sky is. You have that iconic fucking guy on the front there with the machine gun who's appeared on so many of their albums. Yeah, this to me is great. It's got a cover of Iron Fist by Motorhead, which is cool. One of my favorite Motorhead songs, in their tradition of mixing covers in. But man, this kicks off with my favorite Sodom song, Nuclear Winter, which they played when I saw them earlier this year in Texas at Hell's Heroes Fest. They played Nuclear Winter, and man, the pit on that song, it's like it almost went from like Houston to El Paso. It was fucking great. Yeah, again, every song on this album is perfect, so I wouldn't even go through the title track or the song listing. The production's heavy. Agent Orange does sound a little heavier. It's like, I don't know if they had more budget or whatever, but it's got a fuller sound. But it's also pretty typical for an 80s thrash album, but the guitar is thick and powerful, very buzzsaw. Tom sounds great. It's fucking fast as shit. It has those mosh breaks, which I love. Yeah, this to me is basically as good as thrash metal gets. These two albums together are as good as thrash metal gets. Like I could put these on any time, and immediately you're just headbanging, fist pumping in the air, punching whatever's in front of you. Hopefully not another person, tables or whatever. But yeah, great fucking album. So this is my number one, with the caveat that this and Agent Orange are both basically perfect albums. So it's like, well, which one of your arms do you like more? I don't know. I kind of like both of them, kind of need both of them. So yeah, that is my number one.
Cool. Ralph?
All right. So my number 4, I'm wearing the t-shirt. I'm wearing an original vintage tour shirt from Europe. I traded a shirt to a guy in Sweden for it. Tap in the Vein. I almost didn't buy this album because I didn't like the Better Off Dead album, and but I was really happy when I did, because this is like the self-titled album. It's so catchy, every song, real powerful, real slamming. I just love it. It's real death metal vibe to it, but it's got almost like a groove to it at the same time for the death metal groove. Unbelievable album. Really love it. So my number 3, I'm gonna go with Obsessed by Cruelty. Is my original vintage copy of it. It's just so dirty and filthy, and it's where it all started. It's such an important album. I've gone back and forth with this in my number 2, but I figure put it at number 3 just for like Justin and everything. But it's a great, important album. It influenced so much extreme music to come after. And so my number 2, I'm going to go with Agent Orange is my original copy, vinyl and CD. This was huge when it came out. It's really good production. Every song's good on it. But my number 1 is one of my all-time favorite albums. And when the CD I got, it came with this Express of Sodomy EP. When we did the EP episode, this is my second favorite EP behind Haunting the Chapel of all time. On this CD makes this one of the greatest CDs you can own. Here's my original vinyl. I got the original poster. I just think it's a perfect album. Top 5 thrash metal of all time. I got a couple other things just to show really quick. These DVDs, Lords of Depravity. They're both double disc DVDs about the history and then a lot of live stuff. They also have so many great unbelievable EPs, all these great EPs out there. So they got 16 albums, but then they got all these EP, oh, and this is like a best of. They got a couple of these albums out there, and yeah, that's it. That's my number. My number one is Persecution Mania.
Good choice.
Yep, of course. All right, my number 4, and I got to track down a copy of this because I've always liked this album, but Code Red from 1999. I mean, it's just here, this, I think you mentioned it, Ryan, in 1999, who was really, out of all these classic thrash bands, who was really doing something so traditional sounding like this? I mean, they did like the crossover thing for a few albums, but now they're back. The production's massive. The title track is great. What Hell Can Create sounds like vintage Slayer. Tombstone is great. Liquidation is just, man, the riffs are just absolutely crushing. I think it's just a killer album. And I got to track down a hard copy of it because I really like it. It's my number 4. My number 3 is Tapping the Vein from 92. Here, got the new guitar player, Andy Brings. You got Harris John producing. I think the production is massive. And I agree with what Ralph said. I think this feels like a death metal album, pretty much. Tom's vocals are absolutely vicious. Body Parts, the riffs just kill on that. I think Chris Witchhunter's drums are just relentless on this whole album, especially on like Body Parts, man, just amazing. One Step Over the Line, that groove, right? That big bottom end, it's all over this album. The guitars are just shredding. Deadline is great. Title track is great. The Crippler is kind of like this death metal, speed metal hybrid, which I really love. Reincarnation is big and epic, gargantuan riffs. I really like this a lot. In re-listening and listening to a lot of this stuff and putting this list together, I was actually surprised that this came as high as it did, but I really like it a lot. And, the top 2, as both of you guys said, are fairly interchangeable. They're both amazing. I'm going to deviate from both of you just slightly, and I'm going to go with Persecution Mania as my number 2. I mean, it's a classic. It's great. 1987. This is kind of like the evolution of that, like, speed of light, brutal thrash metal right here. I mean, Nuclear Winter is amazing. Electrocution is just relentless. I love the cover of Iron Fist. I almost wish they put another original tune on here, though, as great as it is, but it's still great. Title track is awesome. Enchanted Lands, Christ Passion, Conjuration. To me, sounds like an evil, or not Conjuration, Conjuration sounds like evil Motorhead, just Motorhead on steroids. Just great. I mean, this album just absolutely crushes. It's a classic for a reason. But for me, I like Agent Orange maybe just a little bit more. Again, another great Harris Johns production. Title track is so good.
Oh, it's insane.
So good. I love the production. I really, when you look, this is a great wraparound cover.
So I found I was looking for it. This is the original photo from Life magazine of that. It's probably fucking shit. You have to Google it. But yeah, Life magazine, that's the inside of a Vietnam era gunship, the spooky gunship. And then he painted it, and then he added the Sodom guy.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's absolutely awesome. What a great cover. And the music is just as good. I mean, Tired in Red, Incest, Remember the Fallen, Magic Dragon. I mean, the riffs are just massive, lethal, and they just bludgeon you nonstop. I think Tom's vocals are just killer on this album. Baptism of Fire, just so good. And, Frank's riffing on this album is just absolutely from another planet. The whole album is just fast, furious, just face-melting stuff. Really great. I mean, obviously, for those watching who maybe haven't taken a dip into Sodom yet, just go out and get these two right off the bat, and that'll start your journey. Either one could be number 1. They're both just absolutely legendary classic albums as far as thrash goes in general, not just German thrash. And I mean, I think when you look at, like, I mean, now that I have taken part in a ranking of Sodom, Destruction, and Creator all within the last like 4 or 5 months, I think when you look at the overall discographies of all 3 bands, I think Sodom's have been the most consistent from start to finish, because you had like, Creator did that little weird gothic time right in the middle, and Destruction did that whole groove metal thing in the middle of everything else. But other than those couple albums of kind of like this crossover thing, I think Sodom have remained pretty true to their original vision for the most part throughout, and probably have the strongest catalog start to finish. So, but your mileage may vary, right? So, but some classics here. Any last words, gentlemen? A great discography, right? And a fun ranking.
So I myself and Ralph are both seeing them again this fall in New York. They're coming back. They haven't played New York City in almost 20 years. Like, I've been able to see them a couple of times recently, but not anywhere in New York. So I'm looking forward to another Sodom show. Hell yeah.
I think I saw them it was on my birthday, and I think it was 2006. If I remember correctly.
I think it was 6. They played 2 shows. They played Poughkeepsie and the Chance, and they played New York City, BB King in Times Square. It was the 2 shows.
Yeah, they played at BB King's. Fin Troll had opened, and I remember I made the mistake of hanging out backstage with drinking with Fin Troll before Sodom went on. That was not a good idea. Not a good idea.
I think Nick made the same mistake, and that's the night I met Nick. Was that show
at BB King's or the one at the Chance?
The one at the Chance.
Okay.
He actually went to the BB King show because he got so, intoxicated. He's like, I don't remember the Sodom set at all. Like, they could have been throwing hand grenades in the crowd and I wouldn't remember it. And so he forced himself, hangover and all, to go to the city the next day to see Sodom in the city, which I didn't do because, I should have seen him twice in a row, but, who knows why I didn't do that. But yeah, I was able to see him 3 times. You went to the city one too?
No, I didn't go to the city. I just went to the Chance one, but I regret that I didn't hang out afterwards, because I remember reading an article where they asked Tom about how the American audiences were. He said the weird thing was, as soon as the show ended, everybody took off and left. He said there was nobody hanging out afterwards. I was like, man, I could have got all my albums signed and shit and hung out with them. I got this. This is a great vinyl too. It's it's one of the best live albums. It's Mortal Way of Life.
Yeah, that one's good.
Highly recommend that album. And they had over 25 people in the band for a 3-piece. That's a lot of members. That's why I didn't really go through too many of the names of people. But now they finally have 4-piece just for the last album. But their whole career they were 3-piece, and they had that many different people in the band. But yeah, just one of the best. They're still going strong. I'm looking forward to the next release.
Yeah, not many thrash bands stay with a 3-piece, right? I mean, a power trios, you don't generally see that in thrash. Usually it's a 2-guitar thing. So it's weird how so late in their career they decide to move into that realm.
Yeah, and they've always sounded good with just 3-piece too. It's never like, man, I need that second guitar. It was never noticeable. Like you said, like Agent Orange, that guitar is massive. It's like the whole sound field. You're like, man, I wish they had 2 going back. It was never missed. But on the new album, it does sound really good. So, whatever they do, they do it right. Yeah.
Have they, it's been a few years now. Has there been any talk of a new album from them?
I haven't heard any. I did get that. I didn't bring it out, but they did re-record like a song from every album going forward. And that was kind of cool. I've been mentioned it here, but I haven't heard anything about a new studio album. But they've all, like Ralph said too, they always do EPs. Like I didn't pull them out, but there's a shit ton of like cool EPs mixed in with the studio albums throughout the years. So they've been still doing that too. Yeah, those 2 are both really cool.
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah, quite a few of them.
So for everybody watching, we realize it's a lot of albums, but if you're familiar with them, rank them down in the comments below, or maybe just give us your top 5 or whatever. Play along with us. This was a Herculean task, and we've all been listening to a lot of Sodom over the last few months to get ready for today, and I think it did not disappoint. So great band. Go check them out. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. We'll be back next week here on Ranking the Albums, where, as we do here all the time, we switch gears from week to week. Grant Arthur will be coming back in next week. We will be ranking the solo albums of former Styx frontman and keyboard player Dennis DeYoung. That's coming up. We got Paul McCartney coming up in the coming weeks. We've got Anthrax coming up in the coming weeks. All sorts of other stuff. So stay tuned for Ranking the Albums each and every Sunday. Till then, for Count Ralphus and Ryan Skow, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon here on SOT. Stay tuned for Rich Catino and myself. We will be doing part 4 of our look at the new wave of traditional heavy metal primer, right? We've got 5 more bands to talk about, so that's coming up in just a little bit. Till then, take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.